This story is titled, I Just Asked If the Gravy Needed Salt. My aunt threw a fork, my uncle stood up screaming, and my grandma started chanting the Lord's Prayer. 3 hours later, the turkey was on fire and my cousin was in handcuffs. All because I wanted to help. I knew something was going to go wrong the second I pulled into the driveway and saw my Uncle Rick standing on the porch in his Crocs, already double-fisting Coors Light at 10:47 a.m. You know how every family has that one holiday that goes nuclear? This was ours. Thanksgiving in Tampa. Hell's waiting room, but with worse drivers. So here's the lineup, just so you can appreciate the full disaster. Me, 27M, trying to survive Thanksgiving with my dignity and liver intact. Aunt Carol, 50s, thinks she's Martha Stewart, but acts like Gordon Ramsay during a seizure. Uncle Rick, 50s, one beer away from quoting QAnon. Cousin Dylan, 22M, fresh out of community college, and somehow already on his third probation. Grandma Barb, 82F, sweet Jesus in orthopedic sneakers. Refers to her Bible more than her GPS. We were already 2 hours behind schedule because Rick accidentally deep-fried a rotisserie chicken instead of the turkey. Don't ask. So everyone's sweaty, hangry, and pretending they still love each other while Carol's losing her mind in the kitchen over how no one respects the timing of a meal. That's when I made the mistake. I walked in, saw the gravy simmering on the stove, and just casually asked, "Hey, does this need salt?" 6 words. That's all it took. Carol dropped her whisk like I'd accused her of drowning puppies. She screamed, "Does it need salt?" Wow. Okay. I guess the family hates my cooking. Then she flung a fork across the room. Not toward me. At me. Like a medieval weapon. It missed and landed in the cat's water dish, which is now probably how Mittens dies. Uncle Rick stood up like it was open mic night at a biker bar and started screaming about how this family has no gratitude, and maybe if people got real jobs instead of judging gravy, they'd understand the pressure. Which is hilarious coming from a guy who thinks crypto is still a good idea and once invested in beef jerky NFTs. Grandma Barb, bless her brittle bones, stood up, raised both hands like Moses parting the Red Sea, and started chanting the Lord's Prayer like she was trying to exorcise the room. My cousin Dylan, who I swear was high the whole time, just laughed and shouted, "Let her cook," which somehow made Carol start crying while holding a baster like it was a knife. And that's when the smoke alarm went off. Turns out Rick put the turkey in the oven with the plastic bag of giblets still inside, and that sucker lit up like it was reenacting the Hindenburg. We ran around trying to douse it with beer, because water's apparently too mainstream, and long story short, Dylan tripped over the fire extinguisher, fell into the oven door, cracked it clean off, and tried to put out the fire by stomping on the turkey. Like full WWE body slam. Cops came an hour later because the neighbors heard shouting, assumed it was domestic violence, and called it in. Dylan mouthed off, obviously, got cuffed for obstruction, and Rick tried to argue, this is a private matter, while shirtless, holding the burnt turkey like a child. And all I did was ask if the damn gravy needed salt. So, Ida? So after my cousin Dylan got shoved into the back of a patrol car barefoot, because apparently he can't be cuffed in Yeezys, their limited edition, we had that awkward silence. You know the kind. The kind that hangs in the air after the fire department leaves. The turkey's a literal charcoal brick on the lawn, and everyone smells like burnt poultry and unresolved trauma. Uncle Rick retreated to the garage like a war veteran after a bad flashback, muttering about deep state birds and how the oven was probably hacked. Aunt Carol had locked herself in the downstairs bathroom, blasting Celine Dion's All By Myself on loop, which honestly felt a little on the nose. Grandma Barb called the pastor from her church prayer group. Not to help. No. She called in to lay hands on this cursed family. When I tell you that man showed up with a Bible, anointing oil, and to look like he'd seen this before, he wasn't even phased. Just rolled up his sleeves and started praying over the singed bird like it owed him money. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting at the kitchen table, quietly eating a plate of mashed potatoes that may or may not have glass shards in them from the fork incident. Trying to decide if this is all real or if I finally snapped at a Walgreens and am hallucinating from stress. At some point, Carol reemerged, red-eyed, dramatic as hell, and declared, "Well, we still have pie." Which sounded promising until we opened the fridge and realized Rick had used all the pie crust to insulate the beer cooler. His words, not mine. There were 3 half-assembled pies, 2 of them partially thawed, and 1 of them filled with pickles. Pickles? Who does that? Grandma Barb took 1 bite, made the sign of the cross, and said this is how Rome fell. Then came the Uno game. Someone, I think it was Cousin Jenny, 18F, who had wisely avoided all previous fire-based activities, suggested we play a nice game to reconnect. Sounds sweet, right? Wrong. Uno, in this family, is spiritual warfare. Carol started stacking draw fours like she was trying to summon a demon. Rick accused Jenny of cheating. Jenny screamed, "You can't cheat at Uno," which triggered some Vietnam-grade flashbacks for Rick apparently, because he flipped the whole table and stormed off yelling, "I fought for this country, and you're abusing the wild cards." Jenny cried. Carol cried harder. Barb just pulled out a rosary like she was charging up a final boss spell. And the best part? My phone buzzes. It's a text from my mom. She skipped this year to go on a silent yoga retreat. Smart woman. The text says, "Hope Thanksgiving's peaceful. Be kind. Families are precious." Oh yeah, Mom. Real precious. Especially when one of them's calling the other a gravy-bashing little Judas, and the oven door is being used as a makeshift sled by toddlers in the front yard. I just sat there, in the wreckage of cranberry sauce, prayer oil, and crushed Uno dreams, and thought, I really should have just stayed home and ordered Chinese. But sure, tell me again how I'm the asshole for asking about salt. So, after the Uno war crimes and the failed pie resurrection, the house finally settled into a kind of post-apocalyptic calm. You know, the weird silence where everyone's too emotionally wrecked to fight, but also too petty to let anything go. That's when Aunt Carol, still wearing her gravy-stained apron and the eyes of someone who's seen the abyss, turned to me and said, "Fine. You think you're so clever with your little salt question? Why don't you cook something then?" I blinked. I was literally trying to help with the, "No, you were trying to shame me, like your mother used to do." Hold up. What now? Grandma Barb froze mid-crossword. Rick stopped mid-sip of his third Four Loko of the day. Even Cousin Jenny paused her trauma TikToking. I suddenly realized this gravy incident had unearthed something ancient. Something generational. Like a family curse passed down through passive-aggressive potato recipes. Don't drag Mom into this, I said, immediately regretting everything I've ever said. But Carol was just getting warmed up. Oh, I'm dragging her. She ruined every Thanksgiving from 1989 to 2004. Always criticizing. Always correcting. And now you come in here with your college degree and your perfect mashed potato whiz technique, and you're smug. Does it need salt face like you're better than me? Rick chimed in from the couch, Birkin resting on his belly like it was a goddamn armrest. He's not better. He's just soft. Like that sad quinoa salad, he brought that taste like wet farts. Side note, I brought that quinoa salad because Carol said someone needed to bring a healthy option, then acted like I'd offered to serve raw possum meat. But then, Jenny, sweet angel of chaos, drops the nuclear bomb of the night. Honestly, none of this would have happened if Dylan hadn't told me he slept with Carol's yoga instructor. You could hear the sound of Aunt Carol's soul leaving her body. Rick sat up so fast his beer fell into his lap. Grandma Barb dropped her crossword and whispered, "Oh, sweet Mary, shield my ears." I just turned to Jenny, mouth dry. "Wait, Dylan what?" "Oh yeah," she said deadpan. "Last month, hot yoga turned into hot something else. Carol found out. That's why she's been rage baking since Halloween. I thought everyone knew." No, Jenny. No one knew." Carol stood up like a Disney villain mid-transformation and shrieked, "You little bitch. You said you wouldn't tell." Jenny shrugged. "You said you'd give me your Disney Plus password and never did." Somewhere in the distance, a police siren wailed, probably from when Rick started trying to light fireworks in the driveway earlier to make the kids smile. Carol stormed out the back door, screaming something about betrayal and gut health. Rick just sat there, whispering, "Yoga? Seriously?" over and over like a broken Roomba. Grandma Barb grabbed her rosary again and said something about casting out lust demons before the devil claims the house. And me? I was sitting at the kitchen island, eating a handful of cold stuffing and Googling, how long does it take food poisoning to kick in, because I'd eaten Rick's deviled eggs and they'd tasted vaguely like ammonia and regret. And in all this chaos, every single person still acted like I was the problem. Like the fork-throwing, yoga-cheating, turkey-immolating circus wasn't already in full meltdown mode before I asked about the damn salt. So again, Ida, so it's now 7 p.m. The fire department's gone. The turkey is a blackened crime scene on the lawn. Carol's locked herself in the shed with a bottle of Barefoot Moscato. And Rick is watching Die Hard 2 with the volume cranked to unnecessary, swearing it's a Christmas movie. Then Dylan shows up. Out of jail. Still barefoot. Still cocky. He walks in like nothing happened and says, and I quote, "They just gave me a warning. Said I seemed too dumb to process." And somehow, that wasn't even the worst sentence he said that night. He flops down at the kitchen table like the prodigal idiot son and starts digging into the leftover side dishes. just full bare hands, shoveling cold green bean casserole like he's been through war. Grandma Barb sees him and immediately starts quoting scripture about sinners returning to the fold. Dylan tells her to chillax and asks if there's weed in the sweet potatoes because they taste kinda dreamy. No, Dylan, that's butter in desperation. Anyway, we're all trying to pretend this night is salvageable. Jenny's TikTok is blowing up with a video of the turkey fire. Carol's still in the shed texting passive-aggressive quotes from Eat, Pray, Love to the family group chat. And then, because the universe hates me, Dylan starts oversharing. He leans back, stretches, and just casually drops this little gem. Man, I needed that detox. Jail's honestly kinda chill if you ignore the screaming. Plus, gave me time to think about, like, Dad's will and stuff. The room froze. Like, actual freeze-frame moment. Because Dylan's dad, my Uncle Greg, Rick's older brother, died last year, and the will hasn't been read yet. Rick muted Bruce Willis mid-grenade launch and said, "What do you mean think about the will?" Dylan just shrugged. You know, just, like, what I'm getting. Pretty sure there's a boat. I already made a vision board. A vision board. For someone else's inheritance. That hasn't even cleared probate. Grandma Barb looked horrified, like he'd confessed to being a Satanist. Rick went full red in the face and screamed, "You're not even in the will, you tangerine-stained tumor," which I assume is a reference to Dylan's Cheeto addiction, but no one had time to confirm because that's when Dylan said the worst possible thing. Yeah, well, I wasn't in it. But then I found the old one. You know, the one where it all goes to Aunt Carol. Silence. And then he smiles. So I might have borrowed it and replaced it with a newer draft. The one where I get the house. Grandma actually screamed. Full banshee mode. Carol burst out of the shed like a raccoon on meth and charged into the kitchen screeching, "What do you mean you touched the will?" Dylan, the genius, tries to run, slips on a yam chunk, crashes into the fridge, and knocks over the suspiciously pink Jell-O mold that's been vibrating ominously since noon. Jenny records the whole thing, of course. Caption, Thanksgiving's version of Succession, but everyone's unemployed. Meanwhile, I'm leaning against the counter, eating a pumpkin pie slice with my fingers like a feral animal, just watching the downfall of my bloodline like it's an HBO finale. And in the middle of all this, Rick turns to me, dead serious, beer in hand, mashed potatoes on his hoodie, and goes, "You're the one who asked about salt. This is your fault." So to recap, Dylan tampered with a legal document. Carol might commit homicide with a garden rake. Grandma is now convinced we're cursed and keeps sprinkling holy water on the cat. And I'm still the asshole because I tried to help with gravy. Cool. I was halfway through my second slice of anxiety pie, just pumpkin and existential dread, when Carol grabbed a bottle of Pinot Grigio and used it like a microphone to start what I now refer to as the confession tour. She climbed onto a dining chair, barefoot, hair full feral, raised her wine like Simba on Pride Rock, and announced, "Since we're all sharing tonight, I've been sleeping with Pastor Doug." Now, you've probably already guessed, but in case not, Pastor Doug is Grandma Barb's preacher. The same man who showed up earlier to spiritually disinfect the turkey fire and prayed over the stuffing like it owed him money. That Pastor Doug. Cue Grandma letting out a sound that I'm 90% sure activated bats in a 5-mile radius. Carol went on. Doug and I have been laying hands on each other every Tuesday for the last 6 months. And no, I'm not sorry. I needed comfort. Rick hasn't touched me since the 2019 Super Bowl. Rick, to his credit, didn't even look shocked. Just took a long sip of beer and muttered, "Guess that explains the missing choir robes." Meanwhile, Jenny Live tweets this with the caption, "Thanksgiving update. Aunt Carol just admitted to emotionally scissoring a preacher." At this point, the dog throws up what looks like 3 Uno cards and a broken crayon. Dylan's hiding behind the fridge like it's going to shield him from prison. Grandma is clutching her Bible like it might transform into a sword. And then things go full telenovela. Because Rick, my God, Rick, leans forward and says, "Well, since we're playing truth or trauma, I've been skimming from Dylan's college fund since he was 10. What? Apparently, the account Aunt Carol set up when Dylan was in Cub Scouts had been slowly bleeding money every year to fund Rick's entrepreneurial ventures, which include 1. Bitcoin mining with an Xbox, 2. A hot sauce brand called Tongue Punch, and 3. An unsuccessful attempt to become a Twitch streamer called Gravy Daddy 420. Dylan yells something about financial abuse and launches himself at Rick like an underfed linebacker. They crash through the living room, knock over Grandma's Precious Moments nativity set, and accidentally set off the Roomba, which starts dragging a gravy-soaked napkin across the floor like a tiny, confused ghost. At this point, my fight-or-flight instinct has turned into sit and watch like it's a reality show. I'm sipping Diet Coke out of a wine glass because the regular cups are covered in cranberry bloodshed, and I've decided I no longer exist as a person, just a spectator of the apocalypse. That's when the ambulance arrives. Apparently, Carol's blood pressure spiked from rage and rose, and she collapsed mid-rant about how no one appreciates homemade cranberry sauce. She had slurred the word sauce, like a French opera singer, and then just dropped. Grandma screamed, Dylan cried, and Rick tried to give her CPR while asking if the paramedics would take Bitcoin. The EMTs wheeled Carol out while she shouted, "Don't let him touch my stuff. He'll pawn it for hot sauce money." Meanwhile, Dylan tried to climb in the back of the ambulance yelling, "I still need you to co-sign my car lease." I swear to God, the paramedic just closed the doors in his face without a word. And through all of this, I kept thinking, maybe, just maybe, if I had stayed quiet and let the gravy be bland, none of this would have happened. But then again, if one damn question about salt triggered all this, maybe the powder keg was already lit. I just happened to be the idiot who struck the match with a ladle. So again, Reddit. Ida? So now we're in the ER waiting room, which is basically Thanksgiving, extended director's cut. Carol's somewhere behind double doors getting evaluated for alcohol-induced hypertension and rage-related collapse. Rick is pacing, muttering about how hospital vending machines are part of Big Pharma. Dylan is asleep on 2 chairs, face down like a crime scene chalk outline. Jenny is live streaming the chaos, tagging it #PrayForCarol #GravyGate. And Grandma Barb is praying louder than anyone should in public. Pastor Doug shows up. Yes, the Pastor Doug. He walks in wearing a fleece vest and the world's guiltiest expression, holding a sad grocery store bouquet that says "Get well soon" in Comic Sans. Grandma locks eyes with him and goes full horror movie mode. I swear I saw her pupils dilate. She hurls a travel Bible at his chest like a blessed frisbee and screams, "You have defiled my bloodline." Doug, ever the coward, flees immediately. The bouquet explodes in a puff of sad daisies. Dylan tries to chase after him, but slips on a Werther's Original and eats linoleum. At this point, a nurse, dead-eyed from what I can only assume is 12 years of this exact situation, comes out and says Carol's stable. The word stable is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Then she says Carol's requesting only family back. Rick grunts, gets up, and starts heading for the double doors. And then Grandma drops the nuke. "Rick," she says, voice calm. Too calm. "You're not family anymore. I had the will changed last year." I swear to God, time stopped. Rick turned around like a man hearing whispers from the upside down. "What the hell do you mean?" Barb adjusted her church cardigan and said, "You signed over your rights to this family when you tried to start a cryptocurrency for truck nuts. The estate now goes to someone who actually cares about this family." Silence. Then she turns. Looks directly at me. The gravy guy. The salt heretic. The man who accidentally tore this family apart with one question. She says, "You, darling. You've always had sense." Rick exploded. Like, literal screaming, arms flailing, a full-grown toddler meltdown. "You gave him the house? The money? He ruined Thanksgiving." Barb just smiled. "No, Richard. You all did that yourselves. He just asked a question." I blinked. I was in shock. My inheritance until 5 minutes ago was just leftover green bean casserole and a Solo cup. Now I apparently own a house, a retirement account, and possibly 3 antique spoons Grandma claims came from a pre-war Prussian duchess. No one fact-checked it. We're too scared. Rick stormed out of the ER screaming, "This isn't over," and I swear the automatic doors even delayed opening like they were tired of his nonsense. We figured that was the end of it. Until 2 hours later, at the Walgreens across from the hospital, Rick tried to celebrate his freedom by stuffing 3 bottles of off-brand bourbon down his cargo pants and running out the door while screaming, "I'll start my own family. A better family. With hookers and bacon." He didn't get far. Because that's when mall security, who apparently takes their job very seriously, tossed him mid-sprint in the parking lot, causing him to collapse face-first into a fiberglass Santa. Jenny caught it on video. Slow motion. Christmas music playing. Caption, "Thanksgiving. Still better than Black Friday." So now Rick's banned from Walgreens. Carol's threatening to sue Pastor Doug for spiritual entrapment. Dylan's trying to start a GoFundMe for emotional damages. And I, apparently, own Grandma's house. And through all this, I keep hearing the same damn sentence in my head. Does this need salt? That's it. That's all I asked. So yeah. Reddit. Ida? So, after the Walgreens incident and Rick's dramatic taser-induced faceplant into Santa's plastic thighs, you'd think the family would take a break. Maybe go home. Reflect. Touch grass. Nope. 3 days later, we're back at Grandma Barb's house for a healing dinner, which she described in the group text as an opportunity for spiritual reconciliation and casseroles. I almost faked COVID, but then I remembered, the house is mine now. Technically. Legally. Unfortunately. The air was thick with passive aggression and whatever smell Rick left in the couch before the tasering. Carol showed up last, draped in a kimono and reeking of essential oils. She declared she was a vessel of divine rebirth now, thanks to her new lifestyle coach named Celestina, who she met in a Facebook group for people betrayed by casseroles and men. She immediately went to the kitchen and started soaking her feet in the sink. "Carol," I said, "that's where the stuffing goes." She looked me dead in the eyes and whispered, "The toxins rise from the salts." I needed a drink. Unfortunately, Barb had locked the liquor cabinet in the name of peace. Meanwhile, Jenny, who, thanks to her viral turkey fire video, now has 84,000 followers, was walking around the house filming a healing vlog titled, "We're Still Thankful, Even If My Cousin Is a Gravy Narc." At one point, she cornered me for an interview. "Hey King," she said, fully serious. "How does it feel to be the accidental main character in a generational trauma saga?" I said I didn't know. She added a sad piano filter anyway. Rick didn't show, which we assumed was part of the court-mandated Walgreens ban radius. Dylan did, with a man bun, and a tattoo on his forearm that said, "Stuff happens in Comic Sans." We were mid-dinner, Grandma's infamous tuna jello mold making its annual cursed appearance, when Carol decided it was time for the ceremonial forgiveness. She stood, tapped a spoon on a mason jar of fermented beets, and announced, "I've written a poem." Everyone groaned. It was called Salt of the Wound. Highlights included: basted in betrayal, seasoned in shame. Your words were knives, my gravy the flame. Turkey burns, but I rise, brined and divine. She was halfway through a verse about being trampled by tradition's boots, when Dylan stood up and yelled, "I need to know if the house has a basement or not." Everyone paused, stared. Then Grandma whispered, "Oh no. Turns out, the house I now own has a basement. A very locked, very hidden basement. One that Grandma sealed up after the incident in '74, which no one ever talked about unless Barb hit the communion wine too hard." Carol started panicking. We swore never to open it again. Dylan ran to the hall closet, yanked open a trapdoor like he was reenacting Stranger Things, and disappeared down the stairs with a flashlight and zero life-preserving instincts. What followed was screaming, thuds, and a single shout of, "Why is there a mannequin down here?" Long story short, the basement was filled with what Grandma called emotional clutter and what Dylan called definite evidence of a haunting. There were boxes labeled "Do Not Open," old VHS tapes with names on them, and disturbingly, one freezer plugged in and running, containing exactly one Cornish hen and a bag of teeth. No one has answers for that, including Barb, who said, "The Lord moves in mysterious packaging." I now own that basement, that freezer, that bag of regret molars. After Dylan emerged covered in cobwebs and what we all pray was just powdered sugar, the dinner ended with Carol reciting one last line. In the end, the salt was never the issue. It was the rot beneath the roast. She dropped the mic, technically a turkey baster. And me? I sat in the kitchen with a cold can of LaCroix, staring at my inherited crypt and wondering how many family secrets come with property taxes. But yeah, sure, all this, because I asked if the gravy needed salt. So it all came down to this. Me, standing in my newly inherited kitchen, surrounded by the emotional shrapnel of 2 weeks of Thanksgiving fallout, holding Grandma Barb's latest homemade digestive tonic, which smelled suspiciously like vinegar and despair. Carol was camped out in the guest room claiming squatters' rights. Dylan was on the living room floor building his startup HQ with empty LaCroix boxes and a broken George Foreman grill. Jenny was filming a trauma house tour for her followers, and Grandma had locked herself in her room for a 3-day prayer cleanse after catching Dylan saging the basement with what turned out to be dried oregano. The only thing keeping me grounded was a little folded note I'd found in one of Barb's shoe boxes the night before. Taped to the back of an old family photo, Thanksgiving, 1994. Everyone smiling. Even Rick. Even Carol. The note said, "If this house ever tears us apart, let the one who finds this decide what to do. Fix it, sell it, or burn the damn thing down. Love, Barb." Honestly, all 3 options were still on the table. But then something weird happened. That morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Barb's lawyer. Apparently, there was a second will. One not altered after Carol's spiritual betrayal or Rick's crypto crimes. One written before all the Thanksgiving chaos, before the gravy showdown. This version split everything equally between the grandkids. Me, Jenny, Dylan. With one catch. We only got it if we could all agree on what to do with the house. Cue the panic attack. I called an emergency meeting in the kitchen. Ginny brought her ring light. Dylan wore sunglasses indoors. Carol tried to interrupt, but I bribed her with a bath bomb and locked the door behind her. I read the clause out loud. Everyone groaned. Then Ginny said, "Look, I'll waive my share if I can keep filming here for content. This place is like Scooby-Doo but with worse fashion." Dylan perked up. "I don't need the house. I just want the shed. And maybe, like, 5K for my mushroom garden/vape lab idea." Was it blackmail? Bribery? Emotional extortion? Honestly, I didn't care. I agreed. We signed. The house officially became mine. No strings. Ginny got her influencer lair. Dylan took over the shed, which he promptly named Gravy Tech HQ. Carol sulked for 3 days, then left on a self-guided vision quest to Sedona. Grandma Barb emerged from her room wearing a glittery sweater that said "Salt happens." She looked at me, nodded, and said, "Well, I suppose this is your circus now." And that night, as I sat at the kitchen table alone for the first time in weeks, I poured myself a glass of leftover boxed wine, cut a slice of pumpkin pie, and just breathed. No forks thrown. No cops. No flaming poultry. Just silence. Peace. And a gravy boat on the counter I still haven't put away. I thought about everything, the chaos, the secrets, the exorcism attempts, the goat named Neil, and realized something wild. All of it, literally all of it, started with 6 stupid words. Does the gravy need more salt? So yeah, Reddit. Final answer, not the asshole. Just the unlucky bastard who triggered a family apocalypse with a seasoning suggestion. And honestly, I'd still do it again. But I'd bring my own damn plate.